Welcome to this series of videos which will introduce you to the Book of Learning if you don't know it. If you do, then maybe you are interested in watching a video adaptation of the book. So it's important to understand that everything I say comes from the Book of Learning. This is basically an adaptation in a video format of the Book of Learning. Maybe it can be useful for some people who prefer to visualize what happens instead of just reading about it. Before you begin this tutorial, you should read through the rules 1.4, 1.6 and the rules section 2, except maybe 2.7, which is the errata of the first edition rulebook. So this is all you need in order to understand this series, and hopefully by the end of it you have a very good grasp of how the game is played, and also you have acquired a taste for the game and you want to play as soon as possible. There are a lot of optional rules in Magic Realm, and this tutorial series uses 3 optional rules: Watchful Natives, the Knight's Adjustment, and Serious Wounds. But don't worry, they will be explained when it's relevant. I encourage you to have a look at, in addition to the rules sections I mentioned, to the daily sequence of play here. You can read in the Book of Learning over here, so daily sequence of play and resolving combat in a clearing, okay, with a round of combat here. Just have a look at it, okay? Don't try to remember everything, but just have a look at it so you know what I'm referring to when I say bird song, for example, sunrise, daylight, sunset, and so on. And so you know also the general rule of the round of combat in the game, right? And so the only thing you really need to understand from the beginning is how a die roll happens in Magic Realm. When a character uses a table, he rolls 2 dice and he uses the higher roll to find the result. So if he rolled 2 and a 5, he uses 5 to find his result. So it's a 5 basically. Statistically, it means that you have a higher chance of rolling a 6, of course, than a 5 than a 4, a 4 than a 3, and so on, so on, so on. So essentially, you have 30% chance of rolling a 6 in a die roll. But that's really it. That's all you need. So we'll start with Chapter 1, which is a White Knight, and since it's a lengthy one, because it starts with the very basics of Magic Realm, I'll split that into 2 or 3 videos, depending on the amount of time it takes to do the first one. Right, so let's get to it. The White Knight is one of the best characters in Magic Realm, which makes him an excellent choice for a beginner. He's strong enough to defeat any opponent, his suit of armor gives him good protection, he's friendly with the Order, who have lots of stuff he would love to purchase, and his honor and health special advantages are extremely useful. He even gets a Type 1 spell, although there is no guarantee he will be able to make use of this limited magical ability. I'll explain why. He's not invincible though. He's slow, he ties easily, he's vulnerable to monsters that attack in large numbers or with fast attacks. He has little to fear from any dragon, but he's in trouble if he finds himself facing a pack of 6 goblins, for example. Let's follow the White Knight's preparation and initial moves to learn some of the basics of Magic Realm. Before the game starts, he takes his starting equipment and then selects his starting location and spell. His great sword, here, and his suit of armor, here, are drawn from the Order at the chapel, the only natives who have such items, so heavy weapons and suits of armor. He also takes his 12 action chits, here, his attention chit over here. So in Tabletop Simulator, you can actually have any attention chits as you want, but you'll only really need 1. And he records that he started the game with 10 gold. So that's over here in the Record of Fate. I write it here in notes. 10 gold. So I might want to zoom here so you can see it here. Yeah. He starts with a Type 1 spell, as I mentioned, and let's see what spells we have here in the Type 1 category. So the Type 1 spells are the holy invocations, I think. So we have Exercise, Peace, Small Blessing, and Make Whole. So you don't take a card, but you choose you can take the deck of cards to choose, and then you record the spell you've chosen in Learned Spells. So let's look at them. He selects, usually the White Knight selects Make Whole as his starting spell, which is the only spell that that really makes any sense for him. He only has 1 magic chit. You can see it here. Okay. He has only 1, so he basically has to be at the chapel, which is a source of white magic, in order to cast the spell. well, to cast any spell. He's unlikely to ever need exercise or peace while at the chapel, and small blessings most likely result, is I wish for strength, and it's useless for him because he already has the ability to inflict tremendous harm in his attacks. How do I know that? Because he has fight shits with T, so tremendous strength. So that's why he selects Make Whole usually. So I'm recording here Make Whole as, Make Whole, Make Whole as his starting spell. Here we go. And we can get rid of these spells, of these cards. Now, his most important pre-game decision is actually where he is going to start. So he can start at either the inn or the chapel. He chooses to start at the chapel, which is a good choice for several reasons. It gives him easy access to the Order, his most important trading partners, and it increases the chance that he might be able to make use of his spell. In addition, by putting some distance between himself and the other characters, most of whom will have to start at the inn, he has the possibility of discovering a treasure site that he could loot before anyone else could even get to it. The main drawback to starting at the chapel is that he will have to fight alone for a while. The natives that appear at the chapel are too expensive to hire until he gets some additional gold, and it's unlikely there will be any other characters around that he could team up with. But the White Knight is a pretty good fighter, and he might prefer to save his gold for trading with the Order instead of hiring a rogue or two at the inn. The White Knight is placed on the map at the chapel, here. Okay, so here's the chapel. The White Knight is just next to it. Green side up, they say in the book. So green side up means that he's hidden. Here we go. So he's hidden. He starts hidden. All characters start the game hidden. They cannot be blocked by monsters or other characters. If a character becomes unhidden, his counter is flipped over to its tan side, it says in the book. So its other side, its light side here. For this turn, I'm going to step through the parts of the day in some details. At the beginning of the day, it's not the 7th day of the week. We are not using the optional weather rules, so nothing happens. Then there's Birdsong. The White Knight now records his activities for day 1. Here we go. We go to the Record of Fate here. And we're going to use here, we're going to write here T, trade, HR, hire, and move to AV2. Now let's see what it means. The White Knight has chosen to do 2 trades, a hire, and then a move. This is a very safe set of activities, so he does not need to hide. The Order is friendly to the White Knight. He will leave the chapel before any other natives can show up, and he does not move to a clearing where monsters can appear. Monsters will never appear in a valley tile that contains a dwelling. A riskier approach would be to do a trade, a hide, and then 2 moves into clearing 1 of the Borderlands over here. This would be dangerous because there's no way of knowing what monsters might be found in the Borderlands, and the White Knight might be trusting his fate to a single hide roll, which has only 70% chance of succeeding. One of the biggest problems that many beginners face is simply keeping their characters alive for more than 1 or 2 days at a time. Your first goal as a beginner is not to win a game or even to finish with a positive score. Your first goal must be to learn to keep your character alive for an entire month, which is 28 days in this game. Now it is sunrise, and with only 1 character in play and no natives currently hired, the only thing that happens during sunrise is that the monster roll is made. So let's go to the setup chart. Here we go. The monster roll with only 1 die is, let's see, 3. So the monsters and natives on line 3 of the setup cards will be prowling today, meaning that they might appear or move on the map. Note that the monster roll is made after the characters write down their activities for the day in Birdsong, so a character has to commit to a course of action without knowing what monsters might be prowling that day. The White Knight is now very relieved that he recorded a safe set of activities. Goblins can prowl on a monster roll of 3, and they could very well appear. Here we go. Here are the goblins with axes, the first group of goblins. They could maybe appear in the Borderlands because it's a cave tile. And as you see, the symbols above the goblin groups are all cave symbols. Now, it is daylight. It is daylight, and each character, hired leader, and control monster take their turns in a random order. Currently, the White Knight is the only individual on the map who will be taking a turn, so he automatically becomes unhidden at the start of his turn. Here we go. Oh, sorry. Oh, I had already flipped the counter. So he was hidden, now he's unhidden. at the beginning of his turn. He then executes the activities that he recorded for this day in the order in which he recorded them. So let's have a look. We have trade, hire, and then move to valley clearing number 2. Awful valley clearing number 2. First phase is trade. The White Knight's phase activity is a trade phase. With a trade phase, the White Knight can attempt to buy one belonging from any unhired native leader or visitor in his clearing. Or he can attempt to sell any number of belongings to an unhired native leader or visitor in his clearing. The White Knight does not have to write down in advance if he's buying or selling. He decides this when he actually executes the trade phase. For this trade phase, he announces that he's buying from the order, so from the order leader, technically, at the chapel. Because he's buying, he gets to look at the 2 treasure cards that the order has for sale in the chapel box on the setup card. So I'm showing you here. Here we go. This is the chapel zone in the setup card, and as you see, there are 2 small treasures here. Well, actually, I know that those are small treasures because it's always small treasures that they have here. He does not show these cards to other players in the game. So here, there's only the White Knight, so let's just flip them. Here we go. Let's zoom. All right. The 2 treasure cards, that the order have are the Lost Keys and the Magic Spectacles, as you see. The Lost Keys can be used to open the chest, the crypt, and the vault. They are basically useless to the White Knight, so he won't want to buy them. Why are they useless? The White Knight can use his tremendous strength in the form of a T-chit. So here we go. He's got these 2 T-chits, fight T-chits. Well, actually, it's fight or move, but so he can even use that one. So he can use these chits to force open the crypt and the vault, so he doesn't need the Lost Keys. The Lost Keys are the only way to open the chest, so they would be useful for that, but the chances of finding the chest are not good at all. A character who buys the Lost Keys and then sets out to find the chest is embarking on a fool's errand. But even though the White Knight doesn't want to buy the Lost Keys, knowing where they are is a valuable piece of information. If he's fortunate enough to find a chest, he knows where the keys are that will open it. If any other character who has not also traded with the order finds the chest, he's likely to simply abandon it, because the chest is useless without the Lost Keys. The Lost Keys have a weight of negligible, so anyone can carry them, and a gold price of 5. So you can see in the card that there is no indication of weight, so that means it's negligible, it has a negligible weight. The Magic Spectacles now are a much more useful treasure. A character who possesses the Magic Spectacles, can record an extra search activity, phase, every single turn. Searching is such a fundamental activity in Magic Realm that having a bonus search phase every turn can be a huge advantage. The Magic Spectacles have a weight of negligible, again, and a gold price of 6. They also increase a character's notoriety by 2, so you can see here the purple 2 here, down below, as long as the character possesses them. After inspecting the Order's treasure cards, the White Knight must now select one item to attempt to purchase with his trade phase. He can select one of the Order's war horses, also, another suit of armor, one of their weapons, or either treasure card. So here you can see that all the items he can technically try and buy. Here we go, sorry. You got lots of war horses. They've got lots of war horses, suit of armor, great axe, 2 great axes, a morning star, a crossbow. Alright, let's get them back to the stack. There we go. So after careful consideration, he narrows his choice down to 3 possibilities. The spectacles, the Magic Spectacles, which, as discussed, are a very useful treasure. The morning star, actually, here we go. The morning star is one of the deadliest weapons in the game. Its speed of 3 when alerted allows it to easily undercut and kill most of the powerful monsters in Magic Realm. And finally, a war horse, which might be very useful. A war horse which make the White Knight nearly invincible, as very few monsters or natives or even other characters are capable of killing it. So it has a tremendous vulnerability here, and it must be killed before your character can be killed if it's used as a move chit during the fight. So that makes your character almost invincible. From these 3 items, the White Knight chooses to try and buy the Morning Star. He probably can't afford a war horse, so the order would have to agree to give one to him for free as a boon. So I'm showing you here the friendly table. So if he gets snake eyes, he's got an opportunity, right? He can roll again on the ally table, and on the ally table he got again another snake eye, boon or price ×1, and the boon is basically the object for free. But it has only a very slim chance of occurring, so he has a better chance of being able to buy either the Morningstar or the Magic Spectacles. He thinks the Morningstar might be a little more useful to him. Nice adjustment optional rule we are using reduces the White Knight's trading relationship with the Order from ally, as you see here, to friendly. Thus, all of his trading and hiring attempts with the Order will be made on the friendly column of the meeting table, as I mentioned earlier. To resolve this trade phase, he rolls on the friendly column of the meeting table, subtracting 1 from his die roll due to his honor special advantage. He has 10 gold to spend, and he could also choose to pay part of any purchase price he receives with his great sword, which is worth 10 gold. Which he really won't need if he has a Morningstar, of course. And so he could meet any purchase price up to 20 gold. If he was also willing to use his suit of armor, gold price 17, to pay for part of a purchase, he could then meet any purchase price up to 37 gold. But giving up his armor protection just to get a better weapon probably isn't a good idea. The Morningstar has a gold price of, let's see, here we go, 8. So he needs either a price ×1 result or a price ×2 result. He rolls the dice and gets, let's see, here we go, a 5, which after subtracting 1 for honor gives him 4 price ×3 result. He can't afford 24 gold unless he gives up his suit of armor, which he declines to do, so his trade phase is unsuccessful. A character using a trade phase to attempt to buy something is never forced to accept any price result. He can always decline any offered price in the hopes of getting a better offer in a later trade phase. Now he has a second trade phase. He tries to buy the Morningstar again in his second trade phase, and this time he rolls a 5 again. So again, it's something he can't afford. So this second trade phase is also unsuccessful. With no guarantee of success, we might wonder, why did the White Knight even bother with trade phases? If he had ignored trading and simply done hide, hide, move, he would have moved into the Borderlands. Here you go. Okay, while being protected by 2 hide attempts, giving him a good start on exploring the map. Well, the primary reason he decided to trade was because he wanted to see what treasures the Order had for sale. Knowing what he might be able to purchase from the Order in the future will help him devise more effectively game plans. And if he was able to buy the Morningstar on the first turn of the game, that could also prove to be a significant advantage, although it could also leave him short of cash to spend on anything else. As a general rule of thumb, you should always attempt to buy something from every friendly or ally native group that you encounter, just so you can see what treasure cards they have for sale. But you should almost never try to buy anything from any unfriendly or enemy native group, as you are likely to lose some fame or notoriety points. So let's have a look here. So unfriendly, as you see, a result of 5 or 4 leads to a challenge or an insult, which basically means that you either lose fame or notoriety, or you accept to be blocked and to battle the group, to fight the group. You could also be blocked, which cancels the remainder of your turn, and could even result in the natives attacking you. Here we go, here, block battle. The interesting question, however, is whether or not you should attempt to buy something from a native group which is neutral to you. There is a risk. If you roll a 6 on the neutral column of the meeting table, you get the treble result, which forces you to immediately roll again on the unfriendly column, as you see here. Overall, there is a 23% chance of something bad happening, so insult, challenge, or blocking. But it's often quite helpful to know what treasures the natives are holding. It can be a tough decision for most characters, but not for the White Knight, because his honor special advantage allows him to subtract 1 from all of his meeting table rolls, so he normally can never get the treble result when trading with neutral natives. Okay, third phase is hire. With a hire phase, a character attempts to hire natives, native mercenaries, to fight alongside him. Any natives hired remain hired for 14 days. Most natives have to be hired all at once as a group, but the rogues and the order are an exception. They can only be hired one individual at a time, starting with the highest numbered unhired individual present. So here we'll start with number 3, as you see. He comes with a warhorse, which is very interesting, and he costs 8 gold. I mean, that's the standard, the basic price, but of course, usually it will be more expensive. So let's try and hire him. Here we go. And he rolls a 5. That's reduced by 1 because of his honor advantage. That results in a price times 3 result. And so it would cost him 24 gold to hire this knight, which is way more gold than the White Knight has, so this higher phase is again unsuccessful. It may seem that the White Knight is just wasting time here. The only thing he accomplished in these first 3 phases was to see what treasure cards that the Order has for sale, and realistically that's actually all he expected to accomplish here. But what the White Knight is really doing is playing smart. He learned a useful piece of information. He avoided taking a risk in a one-hide move into the borderlands, and while preparing for a safer move into the borderland on day 2, he gave himself 3 chances to maybe get a lucky die roll at absolutely no risk. So we have one final phase to go through, which is the move phase here. Move phases allow a character to move around the map, traveling from clearing to clearing along the roadways, paths and passages. So here's a roadway. Here's a path, and here's a passage. Okay. There are no prerequisites for movement. A character is always capable of moving, but to carry any belonging with a weight greater than negligible, a character must have a suitable move chit active. This move chit must be strong enough to carry the character's heaviest belonging. The White Knight has 2 belongings, his greatsword and his suit of armor. Therefore, in order to carry these belongings with him when he moves, he must have an active H move chit or an active T move chit. He has these move chits. The numbers and asterisks on the move chits do not apply during move phases, and the number of move chits does not matter. A single move chit can carry any number of belongings whose weight is equal to or less than the move chit's strength. If a character has a belonging that is too heavy for him to carry, he will have to abandon that belonging before he can execute a move phase. All of the White Knight's move chits are active, and all of them are strong enough to carry his greatsword and suit of armor, so he moves from the chapel to clearing 2 of the Awful Valley, which ends his turn. Monsters do not appear in valleys that contain dwellings, so these valleys are safe unless you are at a dwelling where neutral, unfriendly or enemy natives are present or could appear. This concludes the daylight portion of day 1. It's now sunset, there are no day spells in effect, only one clearing contains a character, hired leader or control monster, so nothing happens here. In the evening, combat occurs, and it occurs in every clearing that contains a character, hired leader or control monster, even if nobody's in the clearing actually wants to fight, or if there's nobody present that they could fight. So why does combat occur even there is no fighting? Because combat occurs because spells, even non-combat spells, can only be cast during combat. So for example, if the White Knight was located at a chapel and had a damaged suit of armor, he would have to use a round of combat to cast his Make Whole spell to repair his armor, even though he isn't actually fighting anybody. Combat is conducted in rounds, and automatically ends after 2 consecutive rounds in which nothing happens. This is what happens here. The White Knight has no spells to cast and nobody to fight, so combat ends after 2 completely uneventful rounds. In actual practice, of course, players will simply skip combat when it's obvious that nothing is going to happen. And now it's midnight. Midnight and nothing happens, and day 1 is complete.